want to talk about how I went from playing on controller, on console, for pretty much most of my gaming life. I took a big break. It's only the last couple of years I got back into gaming, and in doing so I moved to PC. And when I initially came to PC, I used controller. So a lot of my early videos I did on my YouTube channel, for example, I'm using probably the Pro controller. And I started using gyro aim, which is by all means really good. Mobile gaming's utilizing a lot of gyro now, so you just got the touch screen and you move it about. I found that very useful, and by all means these two are very good at that. And something that basically wanted me to get better is I was initially playing games like, and controller games are a little bit different, I would say, to sort of what is keyboard and mouse games. And I'll just talk a bit about sort of the transition of me going from controller into keyboard and mouse, and then just what I use and maybe some tips that might help you out like it did me. So I was initially playing games like Gears of War, Red Dead Redemption. At the beginning, when I first got into sort of PC gaming, using a controller, wasn't familiar with keyboard and mouse, so I didn't use it. You know, gaming for me was always using one of these. I played stuff like, Rainbow Six, and Apex was the main thing that someone recommended to me, and I really got into it. The problem I found is that you can do very well, even in like Rainbow Six Siege, you can do very well with a controller, particularly if you know your advantages, which is usually like close quarters, holding an angle when you know, with like a joystick you can just keep a perfect, you know, it doesn't move, you can keep a perfect angle, like pinpoint almost. But so the problem I found is that, particularly like with Apex, is it would come to like long range engagements, you know, probably outside of like 100 meters, and I found it really hard to challenge these people that were seemingly beaming me at that range. And so I always knew that I had to essentially try and get closer to win any engagements. Now, I actually haven't played Apex probably since I've learned keyboard and mouse, even though that game is the game that made me want to learn keyboard and mouse. Now, I would say, because this is quite a common thing I see, I would say you don't want to play a battle royale as your learning game when you're changing peripherals. If you decide that you want to give mouse and keyboard a go, okay, I'm going to put these away. You don't want to be playing games like Apex. It's great, and obviously you know what you're doing, you really want to play it, you know the guns, you know the gameplay, you may be like me, maybe you've got like thousands of hours on a game like, say, just using it as an example, right, on controller, but you want to play it, but keyboard and mouse, you've got no hours or whatever. I would really recommend it, as hard as it is, and the problem is you'll find yourself, if you do that, you'll be like playing and you'll want to do something, you can't do it because the muscle memory just isn't familiar with this. And I'll be honest, I think it would take you probably more than a year, even of just playing Apex, nothing else, using mouse and keyboard, it would still take you more than a year to get to the point where you were with controller. Okay, it's just too much of a you know, it's too much of an action-packed game. It's like just giving a first-time gamer something like Apex, when it's just not going to happen. Okay, so I mean, something like Fall Guys, again, not really ideal because it's the opposite end. It's not complicated enough, in my opinion. So games that helped me with enough waffling is Back 4 Blood, which weirdly needs an update now, all of a sudden. Back 4 Blood and Genshin Impact are two games that helped me get familiar with keyboard and mouse. Not so recommending either of them. Obviously, Back 4 Blood's a great sort of get familiar with your mouse, your key bindings. It's very fast-paced towards most of the action. It can be quite casual, but it's still fast-paced. You've got to be good in the aiming. And a game like that, when it's PvE, will help you get familiar with the controls, and you can take that experience and go and turn it into, you know, whatever game, Fortnite, Apex, whatever you want to do. But I wouldn't really recommend. You say, why Genshin? Genshin, just because it's a PvE, it's a story game, and I was using 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons I wasn't really familiar with. I was having to use Q and X is like my ultimate, where I typically think default's Q and E. I wouldn't really recommend the Q and E, but do what you want. But that helped me. So that's what I would say. And then once you feel comfortable with keyboard and mouse, which would probably take a couple of weeks to get comfortable with it, then, you know, maybe go and try a bit of Apex, see how you get on. You know, the problem will be is you'll always have what I had, I'm pretty sure of it, is you'll be like, oh, I know I can do better, and you'll just plug in the controller and you'll just play with controller. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know. If you just want to play, you know, and you know you can do better or whatever. But for me, I specifically wanted to learn keyboard and mouse. So something important, right, moving on, is that these controllers, anyone that has been a controller player knows that a good quality controller, usually the official controllers, are the best. I know they're starting to do premium stuff with paddles and things now. I've never been a paddle player, but I'm sure if you're familiar with that, again, you want a nice high quality product. Now, the mouse I used when I first got into this, and I haven't got the keyboard to show, I really should have grabbed one. Actually, I guess we've got this, you know, the keyboard you get free with your like all-in-one PC. It's like a HP keyboard or something. And this is what I bought like initially, or a similar version to this. It was wireless, like a sort of typical looking gamer mouse. This one's wired. And I bought this thinking this will be great. The problem is it's if you've got nothing else, it's okay. But even I found that I couldn't be precise. This has got only like 3 modular sensitivities, which is this button here you can change. So I can even probably demonstrate. It's got, I think this has 4 actually. So you've got like a little bit does loads. That's probably like 1600 DPI. Then it goes to like 400, 600, like 800. And then just goes to like 1600 DPI. That is the speed of what the mouse moves. So you can see I can barely wiggle it there, and we're doing the entire screen in a circle. Now if I press it down, we're doing a smaller circle, more reasonable there. It's probably about 400, 500. I personally found the sweet spot for me being 800. I didn't think that would be the case. You're going to have that. So again, when it comes to setting sensitivity, it's all personal. You know, some people, typically old school mouse used to be a very small mouse pad, and you would have a very slow sensitivity. So you would be doing what I kind of do a lot, and you end up lifting and dragging, and that's what I ended up. But anyway, do not buy something like this. To be honest, I would even say default HP mouse is probably better than something like this. But ultimately, you want to do yourself a favor and buy yourself a nice mouse, okay? Most people don't like Razer, whatever, Logitech, whatever you want to go with, Steel Series, they're all sort of, you want to go with a branded mouse, okay? If you can get an opportunity to go and actually feel them and put your hand on multiple different versions, take the advantage of doing something like that and picking what you want. I didn't get the chance to do that, but from my research and knowing that I like this lip on the side here, I knew I'd like this. This is a very heavy mouse, this Razer Basilisk Ultimate, and you can see my grip here is a bit weird. I've got a bit of a claw grip, which is where I put my 2 fingers there are doing a lot of the work. Particularly this bottom one here is doing a lot of the work for me, and I tend to have a bit of a clutch, so my palm isn't actually, don't know how I'm getting this on camera, my palm isn't actually on the mouse as such. I've got this kind of claw grip on it, and that's kind of what I do. Now for me, something that was very weird, without going to the keyboard just yet, is I didn't want something that had a lot of buttons, and you can see I've worn it a lot here, but I definitely wanted this 2 side buttons here, and then this paddle intrigued me on this mouse, and a lot of the high-end mouses have got this external button. So do I go into Razer? Oh, I might as well, it shows it quickly. No problem, and it opens it up. So you can shortcut this mouse to pretty much anything you want. A lot of people don't do this or don't know about this, but basically this paddle could be a shortcut to anything. You've got the scroll up and down, but there is also I don't know, I'm not going to do anything, I don't think, but you've got a button left and right here as well, so it's not just an up and down and a center click. Obviously you've got a left and right. And there's 2, in theory, DPI switches, but again, I've remapped these 2 buttons for Ector switches, and this is obviously a switch. So immediately what I liked, because on controller, I never played claw, which is kind of like this, and that's probably the meta way of playing a controller, really, but I never liked that. I always use my thumb, so my thumb was doing both the joystick and the buttons here. And so my thumb was mainly used to pressing these buttons on the joystick. But the big one for me was X, or square in this case, and that was for reloading. And you know, 20 years of pressing that for reloading, it's kind of hard to get out of it. So this button here, mouse 5, mouse 4, can't remember which one it is, this is my reload. And it has been, and that was one of the first things I did, and that made me get familiar immediately with more comfortable with mouse and keyboard, just because I can use my muscle memory for my thumb to reload. We're back in action sort of thing. Then, because again, you'd click in the thumbstick for melee, or maybe B for melee, I have my melee as the button forward, or in like Fortnite, that's my edit button. What else is it? I think in like Naraka Blade Point, that's my parry button. Can't remember what else I use that for. It's a lock-on feature in something I use. I can't remember. What do I use that for in Tower of Fantasy? I don't know if I even do use that in Tower of Fantasy. But then it comes to this paddle here, and I've remapped it to F. I don't know why. Out of everything that I'm used to, F is just something I've never been that comfortable using. Now, sometimes I will hit it on the keyboard. But again, I basically F I use on this paddle for like everything, which is just this button. So I've been very familiar with that, and so F for like my pickaxe, getting in and out of cars, picking up items, whatever the game may be. I found having this paddle here to press with my thumb like that, again, extremely useful. Means I can keep moving, keep my hands on the keyboard, and I don't have to worry about it. But I do probably need to remap that to something else. Now, push to talk, even though I'm not the biggest talker in games nowadays, I do need to get better at that. I have it as T on the keyboard. A little bit awkward to use, but if you see here, my push, the scroll wheel to the right is T. And so all I need to do, if my finger's on here, is push, just lightly push over and hold it, or whatever. If it's hold, push to talk. And I found that to be a really easy solution for push to talk. To be honest, I can just quickly do that. I don't take my finger off the trigger, obviously. Basically, I can still be in the action. I can still move around on the keyboard. I'm not limited to, you know, having to press caps or something awkward, and then someone, you know, a game like Daisy, you're talking to someone and then they just shoot you because you can't react quickly. What's another we got here? G and V on the top here. They can be whatever you want, but that's what suits me. Usually for like grenades and for like melee, or I usually use V for prone sometimes. It really depends. It depends on the game. Like PUBG, that's my from third person to first person perspective change button, and it's nice and easy to have it quickly on there. I think it's my trap button in Fortnite, but there hasn't been traps in Fortnite for a while. The rest of it's basically default. I actually, again, I've got the scroll wheel click as center, but then actually it's got this right button, which is a lot easier to press. That is also scroll wheel click. I could have that as, again, something else that would help me, but I just have that because I can double ping that quickly. And so usually it's ping in most games, and so that covers that. But hopefully that helps you. That's what's helped me. I say 800 DPI on the mouse. I've been really happy with 800 DPI, and I tend to lift quite a bit. I'd like to almost demonstrate with a game here, but whatever. I didn't want to distract the video too much. But I tend to like lift a little bit in between my strokes, enough that my mouse is sort of wearing on the side underneath, which is quite funny. But going into the keyboard's pretty much standard. The one for me, as I say, with like Genshin, is getting used to pressing 1, 2, 3, and 4. Q, X, C. I never liked R for reload. R was always a bit of an annoying one for me to hit. And obviously you got Shift and Control. This just takes a lot of time. You want a good keyboard. This is an optical switch RAZER tournament keyboard. You got to want something decent ultimately. I started out with something a bit more like this. Again, the keyboard is not such a big deal. The problem is if you get a cheap mechanical keyboard like my initial one I started out with, it doesn't really let you press more than one button at the same time. So like I found myself quickly pressing, like, say, just the 8WASD here. It wouldn't register some of the inputs, and you'd be trying to shift left and right, particularly if you're lean peaking. which lean peaking, some people find that really hard. A DayZ streamer, not Benji, but someone else, Ceramore, who is on as well, found out. But basically you want to be using your W finger, which is your middle finger here. You want to be using that, say press E when you're leaning, and then pressing Q when you're doing that as well. Now that I'm actually looking at it, it's weird to look at it, because I don't normally look at what I'm doing. Yeah, so it's like that, and then I can... Yeah, so it's like... See, this is the thing with keyboard, right? Is that this is the problem that I found not really being used to it, is that there's so many muscle memory areas to work on, and each... Work on say Q and E and X first. You know, don't really worry so much about 1, 2, 3, 4. I initially used to use scroll wheel to change weapon when I first started, but ultimately you don't want to be doing that. That's not good. But when you're just starting out, you're just feeling it out, that's perfectly fine in my opinion, because having to then learn say 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 and 6 as well, it's a little bit too much muscle memory, because like, for me, I found it was like, oh, now I've got to press 1. What do I press 1 with? You know? And this is where you got to find what's comfortable for you. But for me, it's apparently this finger's good for 1. But then if I was to go for 2, it's no doubt probably be my... Would it be that as well? What would I... Oh, it might be that as well. See, this is weird. I don't actually know what I use. 3, I'm guessing, yeah, I use that. If I was to get my, say, my shotgun, would it be that? Pistol, yeah. So am I using this finger to cover 1 and 2, and I'm using this finger to cover that, maybe 6 as well. Q is this finger again, tab is this finger, E is this finger, R would be this finger, F would be this finger, G would be this finger, C is this finger, X is this finger, Z is this finger. So really I'm quite bad, really. I guess I use this finger and this finger for a lot of my alt presses. Obviously shift is your little finger, and control, I use my thumb for alt. Alt is typically crouch or hold crouch, and I'll have C for prone. Depends on the game. Some games I say it has to be C and V, and then I'll have this as something else. A tip that I heard someone do the other day, it's got fingers on it, is that you can say put a shift size button on your space bar, which means then you can have like, you can then put your, if you're doing what I'm doing using your thumb, you then don't have to do this weird little claw with your thumb. You could just rest it on the bottom here and have it on C or V. To be honest, I thought about that a while ago. I haven't tried it, but if I'm honest, I feel like I'd probably prefer that, but I haven't done it just as is. H, again, I use H a lot for like menus and stuff, but again, I typically have that off. For map and N, which I use a lot, or even B, I use my thumb again. Kind of like the space, I use my thumb, so this is kind of something I've been used to here. I just reach over, twist my hand over, press M and M, and then everything else is kind of, you know, if you press enter, you do whatever. But to be fair, you see, this is the problem. It really depends on like so you'll have something like weird, you know, where you're resurrecting someone, you're holding E, but then you want to change to your weapon. So you'll end up having to necessarily learn different muscle memory depending on what you're doing. It's quite weird. For me particularly, it's been hitting C recently in building in Fortnite, but now I'm a bit more... Okay, if I was to build a ramp in my head, God, how can I do that? I'd be like... You know, it's so weird not having it on the screen in front of me. I don't know what I press. I can't even feel like, it feels like I'm just... Is that it? I think that's it. I think it's CRQ, and I do it like that. I pretty much have it. Yeah, so I'm pretty much, I use this weird, I use like these 3 fingers to go like C, R, Q all at the same time, basically, to put a ramp down. That's kind of why I do it. It's a bit weird. My muscle memory is only getting used to that. But anyway, we're kind of waffling in this. I think I've said everything I wanted to say. Hopefully that gets you going. Again, you want to invest in your pieces. You want a nice mouse. You know, the mouse is the big deal. It doesn't necessarily need to be macros and stuff like I've got. But it does need to be a good quality mouse, you know, on par with a controller. Definitely worth the investment. I wouldn't even really consider or recommend using a cheap mouse or something like this. Just don't, you know. It looks great. It looks great. And for like, I know you could argue, why am I using this? Sometimes gacha games require you to click like millions of times to like level up and stuff. So that's why this is here. Sometimes if this was to die at low battery, if I've been gaming and not put it on its charging stand, I've just got that as a backup. So I'm not, you know, it's actually more of a streaming thing that potentially, if you're streaming more than 5 hours, this won't make it without charging in between, particularly if you're gaming constantly. So it's just to have something in between that you can, you know, you're not shut down on the computer. Same thing with this. Although that was just to have a full-size keyboard and it's spare, but whatever, it doesn't matter. So, not a bad idea, but that's just me. Anyway, if you've watched all this, I appreciate it. If it helped you, leave a like, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.